Hi, I'm Nicole, and this is Nick's Picks. I've been posting a video every month just talking about the books that I picked out to read that month. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 books that I read in October. Once again, I am very late posting my video, but I figured better late than never. And it'll be a quick video anyway because it's only 3 books. I mean, going into September, October, I was so excited for all these thrillers and spooky books and fall romances that I wanted to read. And I only ended up with 3 books this month. Mostly because I devoted some time that I've been putting off to editing some of my own work, and also because unfortunately one of the books I read was just not what I hoped it would be. So I got a little stuck on it. It took forever to read. Looks like we have a guest today. This is Alvin, my cat, so he'll be poking around. But anyway, so the first book I read was actually great. It was like the perfect fall read, perfect October read. It's The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. So honestly, I was not psyched going into this book. Now I know this is a huge series. This is the Dream Harbor series. And a lot of people love this book. Pretty much everything you hear about this book is positive, and this whole entire series. So I got this book last Christmas as part of my huge Christmas haul. And mostly, you know, because I have such a specific TBR on so many books I'm excited to read and excited to get. I had told my husband a lot of the books that I wanted, but he threw this in there as a surprise. And again, because it was so popular, he had looked up, you know, some of the stuff I'm interested in and, you know, saw that this was a trending book, something very popular, so he threw it in. Now, whenever I get a book, especially multiple books, I'll usually read the first couple of pages just to see which one hooks me, which one I'm really interested in going on with. And at the time, I opened this up whenever I did after Christmas, and the beginning just seemed like a little cheesy. The reason it wasn't even on my list was because, you know, it's all like books like this, the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, Gingerbread Bake, whatever it is, Gingerbread Bakery or something like that. So I just overall was getting like a bit of a cheesy vibe from it. And a lot of people were saying that if you love Gilmore Girls, you'll love this book. So I was just like afraid that it was going to be a little too fan fiction-y, like a little too exact on the nose with the Gilmore Girls stuff. So that's why I wasn't super psyched jumping in. And then I read the first couple of pages, wasn't totally impressed with the writing right away. It did seem a little cheesy. So I decided to put it off. And I said I'll either read it over the summer because I love fall and I love autumn. So when I'm kind of like jonesing for that over the summer, getting excited for it, I'll read it, or I'll read it in the fall. And that's what ended up happening. And was I wrong? This was a great book. I loved this book, and I am so excited for the rest of the series. I definitely see what all the hype is about in terms of the Gilmore Girls stuff, and I love Gilmore Girls, but it was not fan fiction-y. Yes, the main character, the guy, is a bit of a grump, but it's not, you know, so yeah, that's Luke or whatever, but like not really. Like it's definitely got those small town vibes like Gilmore Girls, the autumny feel, the everyone around is neighbors and friends or just kind of in each other's business type situation. A lot of unique characters, unique townspeople, unique places in town, like a lot of like iconic locations that everyone in the town knows, like the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. So it was Gilmore Girls in that sense, gave you the feels. But it didn't really seem too derivative or fan fiction or anything like that. Like this was definitely its own thing, its own town, its own place. And I did really enjoy it. So the premise is Jeannie and Logan. Jeannie and Logan, he's, like I said, kind of grumpy. He grew up in this town and loves it, and something kind of happened that just made things a little weird for him, made him grumpy or whatever. And Jeannie's brand new to the town, so she was kind of like it's like your typical Hallmark plot. She was like had a job in New York, you know, the hustle and bustle, and something happened there that she was trying to get away from and slow things down. So her aunt owned the Pumpkin Spice Cafe and ended up giving it to her. She was like going to move on and retire or whatever it was. So she's brand new in town with this brand new business, and he ends up helping her with some stuff, and eventually, you know, everything happens. The spice factor, actual spice, not the pumpkin spice, was not so heavy. Like this was not a spice heavy book to me, but when it came in and was there, it was good. It was good spice. But again, not a ton of it. Like if you like a ton of spice, this didn't have a ton of spice, but it had a lot of romance, a lot of leading up to it. And then when you got to the spice, it was very good. I will almost say I wish there was a little bit more banter and stuff before they got together. Like I am not one for drawn out too long, like, get to the good stuff, or to get somebody together and we miss this, we miss that, and all that typical plot stuff. I hate when that drags out too long. However, even though the spice didn't come quick, them kinds of getting together, hooking up, whatever it was, was pretty quick. Like, I wish there was a little bit more of the banter and the should we before we actually like kind of got to them even kissing or doing anything. That would be like my one little negative. But even with them together, again, they didn't like have the spice stuff right away, and there was a lot of ups and downs and things with the relationship going on. So we still went on a journey there, and the end was still satisfying. So it was very good. The characters were really good. All the characters in the town, I really like them, and I'm really looking forward to the next books. Like, I will definitely continue with the series. It reminds me a little bit of Rebel Blue Ranch, which is a cowboy romance series that I had read over the summer, or maybe a little before the summer, I don't remember. But when I talked about that, I said the first book was my least favorite, and then the rest I loved. And the first book was good, but typically in a series, I feel the first one can be a little slow. It can be just a little bit too explanatory. Like, we're setting everything up, we're meeting everyone, we're establishing everything. Once you get to the next book, everything's established. We know who all the characters are. We know who everyone is. So we get to just kind of like have fun with those characters and the town. So I'm really looking forward even more now to the next books. And the third one is, I think the third one is the Christmas Tree Farm. So I got to hurry up because I definitely want to read 2 and 3 now within the season, so that I don't, have that same thing where I'm going to get that book after Christmas and I feel like I got to wait till next year because I don't want to read a Christmas book in February or whatever it is. So I feel like I'm really anxious to read books 2 and 3 now in the Christmas season. And then that way I could continue from there. But again, just definitely good characters, good spice, good setup for the rest of the books. I'm very excited to follow the rest of the stories and the people in this town. Even the cover is very cute, very autumny. It was great. It was definitely it was a good book. It wasn't quite 5 stars for me, but it was definitely close, and I would recommend it and recommend the whole series. The next book I'm going to talk about, even though it's not the one I finished next, I'm going to talk about the one that I didn't really love. And surprisingly, that was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Now, if you have watched my videos, the last couple, I've become a quick overnight super fan of Grady Hendrix, because in August I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by him and loved it. And in September, I read Horror Store and absolutely loved it even more than that. So I was very excited and really anticipating my next Grady Hendrix. And he is a horror writer, so I thought perfect for October, for Halloween. Even though this wasn't quite seasonal, I just felt like it was a horror story and that would work. And it really slowed me down and took me a step back. Now, I don't want to bash this book or say anything too horrible about it or about him. This did not deter me from reading more of his books. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm excited to get to even more of the other ones that I've heard about that people like. I will say in August and September, those other 2 books I read, the marketing was great. Like, I actually loved the gimmick of the book. So My Best Friend's Exorcism had like a VHS looking cover, very 80s horror, just vibes. And I loved it. And Horror Store was kind of like a haunted IKEA type ghost story, and which was a great idea and premise. And then the book itself was made to kind of look like the manual or like an IKEA manual type thing. So that was just step above. Loved it. But the writing was also good. Like, even though this is the first non-gimmicky book and I didn't like it, that is coincidental because I did still love the writing in those books. In My Best Friend's Exorcism, it was a coming-of-age story between 2 girls written by this guy, and I was so impressed with that. He really hit the nail on the head on so many things. For Horror Story, it was a ghost story. And, it's very easy to be scared when you're in a real haunted house or when you're watching TV, watching a horror movie, because you're seeing graphic things, scary things, jump scares, whatever. It's harder to be spooked out by a book, but I think he did so good with Horror Story. It was a great ghost story. There was creepy elements, really kind of, no, I wasn't scared to death and afraid to keep the lights on, the lights off kind of thing, but it creeped me out. It was a creepy story. It really captured a ghost story, I felt, in a good way. And I do feel the writing in this book was also very well done. So the premise here is that there's a book club. This takes place in the South, and there's a bunch of like suburban stay-at-home moms. Nobody gives them a lot of credit for anything. They're only kind of good for like cooking and cleaning and getting the kids off to activities, stuff like that. And then this vampire kind of infiltrates the neighborhood, and I mean, you don't know he's a vampire. It's just this guy, but Patricia, who's the main character, she's like the only one that's suspicious of him, so she's got to really try to get everybody else on board, because he's like he's charming. And the men are no help at all, because again, they just think these are their silly wives with their letting their book club kind of book read fantasies get away with them, so they get no help from them. And it's, the story itself, great premise. Right in like the prologue, there was like a great thing that I read that like got me so excited. I was even gonna like read that. I'm gonna read that one sentence that I loved. Well, just like the first paragraph, because it was like so good. This is what drew me in and was like, wow, this is gonna be great. Great writing. This story ends in blood. Every story begins in blood. A squalling baby yanked from the womb, bathed in mucus and half a quart of their mother's blood. But not many stories end in blood these days. Usually it's a return to the hospital and a dry, quiet death surrounded by machines after a heart attack in the driveway, a stroke on the back porch, or a slow fade from lung cancer. This story begins with 5 little girls, each born in a splash of her mother's blood, cleaned up, patted dry, then turned into proper young ladies, instructed in the wifely arts to become perfect partners and responsible parents, mothers who help with homework and do the laundry, who belong to church flower societies and bunco clubs, who send their children to cotillion and private schools. That alone was like, wow, I just loved that, and I like couldn't wait for this. I've compared him to Stephen King, who's like one of my favorite authors of all time. Just because like it's sometimes Stephen King's books are slow and just very, very long, because he's spending so much time crafting every word of his sentences, and I usually don't mind as long as I'm in the mode and in the vibe for a Stephen King book. I know I'm in it for the long haul. It might not be as like I can't put this down gripping, but usually it comes to a point where it is, and even in the beginning you're just really enjoying the ride and the journey. And I kind of feel that way with him too. Like his writing is so well done that like he just really like puts you in the place, puts you in the moment. He's so descriptive. I knew this character development was insane. These women, they all had separate personalities. You knew them, you knew this town, you knew what this was just like. He painted a wonderful picture. But it just took a long time to do it, and I just feel like there's just wasn't enough action or things drawing me to like keep picking up this book. Like it was just slow. What I read was good, but it was just slow. Even like the graphic scenes. There's one scene with rats. I won't say too much more, but like, ooh, he described that perfectly, and that was like it's a fear of many, and like you don't want to be stuck in that scene for sure. So that was good. There was one scene I actually didn't really love. It was kind of like a sexual thing involving like a child, and it just kind of grossed me out a bit. But like, and a couple other things like grossed me out a bit, sometimes in a bad way, sometimes in like a good way. So everything was there. He was like, but I can't describe it. It read slow. It was like a big book. It was very slow paced, and it just read slow. And even at the end, the big moment we're waiting for, it was good. It was very graphic. It was really good in that sense, but I don't know what else I would have wanted. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, all I could say is well written, so much symbolism, characters were great, but it just fell a little flat for me, was a little too slow moving for me, and that was the end of it. The only other thing I'll say is maybe it was also like I was looking for, it's my favorite time of year, Halloween, October, spookiness, and this didn't, the end of the story, takes place throughout the entire year. And the start of each section is like the name of the book they're reading in the book club, which again, there's just symbolism in there. It was great in that sense. And it takes you through kind of like the whole year, but this is in the South, so no matter where we are, it's just always hot, like a lot of his descriptions is how sticky it is outside and all that stuff. And I live in New York, and that's not my fall, so like, that's just that wasn't like even connecting. And it's not like all my books have to correspond with the season I'm in, but in this particular season, when I was looking for like Halloween-y, autumny, all that stuff I love, I was just really having those vibes. This didn't really give me those vibes either, so I feel like that was just kind of like an added downside, for me. but it will not deter me from his books. I still recommend him highly as an author, but this was just a little too slow moving for me. Just something didn't connect for me fully here. And then the last book is something that I picked up kind of while I was reading that book in one of my slumps. And I'll be honest, I cheated a bit. That book I finished on November 1st or 2nd, whatever that date was, that weekend after Halloween, because I still had like almost 200 pages left. And I was like, I got to be done and move on to my November reads. So I forced myself to read a book I wasn't all that into, like 200 pages of it in like a day and a half. So that was crazy. But anyway, a little bit before that, when I put it down for a minute, I picked this up just because I was so wanting to be in the spooky season, Halloween season vibes. And I went with Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, I don't know how to pronounce it, and Faith Erin Hicks. This is a graphic novel, and it was so great. So I bought this a few months ago. Again, same idea. I even bought myself, because, you know, in the summer, whenever I bought this, there's no pumpkin spice lattes at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. So I bought myself the pumpkin coffee I get from my Keurig usually in the fall. And I was like, I'm going to have myself a fall night. I'm going to put the air on high, and I'm going to like make myself a little fall night of my own. And I didn't end up doing that, but I'm almost glad that I waited, because it really was the perfect thing that I needed at this point in October. My house was decorated. I'm a big Halloween person. I used to throw huge parties with my husband every year, so we have a lot of good stuff. We put a little of that stuff out every year in our house. I have like fake leaves everywhere on the TV and stuff. And I actually found this really great tea at Trader Joe's, Harvest Blend. It tastes and smells like all things fall. So I had my tea going, my atmospheric apartment with all my fall stuff going on, and Pumpkinheads, and it was a wonderful night. This was a one sitting read. This was a great story. So again, this is about two friends, and the premise here is that they work at this, like, I want to show you the picture because, again, they work at this pumpkin patch every fall. That's really the only time they see each other. They work the same booth at this pumpkin patch for 2 months a year, and they don't really talk at any other time of the year. In the beginning, we right away have a map of the pumpkin patch, which I love. And in the back, it's kind of like the nighttime version. So I loved that too. All right, so they really set this up. They let you're kind of right away in the pumpkin patch, visualizing all this stuff. And if you've ever been to a pumpkin patch, or the weekend before I read this, I was apple picking, so I was in that mode. You know what this is like. And the illustrations are just so on point. They're just amazing. They're beautiful. They are so fall. I always like to kind of just go through and show on a graphic novel. It's amazing. These were definitely fall, pumpkin, autumny vibes. It was perfect, these illustrations. And this story was so sweet. Again, it's these two friends, and they are with each other at the pumpkin patch, working the pumpkin patch every year, but they really just stay in their booth. But now this is their last night of their last year doing this, because they're going to be off to college. And the guy is a little bit, I forgot their names. Hold on one second. Josie and Deja. Right. So Josie, that's the guy. He is very, very, down and out about this being the last night, about moving on in life, about how he's going to miss this. And Deja's very making the best of it. And, we're going to come back and visit, even though we're not working it anymore, and all this kind of stuff. And she's helping him because there was a girl that he has a crush on that he never said a word to all these years. So this very last night, they're going on a mission to have him speak to this girl that he's had the crush on. So, and in doing so, they've left their booth, and they end up kind of taking a journey for the first time through this pumpkin patch that they've worked all these years. And, because she got moved from this place, so they're kind of having to chase her down, this girl, the whole time. So we get to see the entire pumpkin patch. They get to see the entire pumpkin patch and experience all of this kind of for the first time, because usually they're just used to staying at their stand. And again, it's a bonding moment between them as friends. It's just having to say goodbye to each other, to this part of their life. A lot of symbolism, and without spoiling anything, the way this works out in the end is so beautiful as well. He does end up seeing the girl, and the way that works out, the way their friendship works, just everything just ends so beautifully. Perfect seasonal read. Would totally recommend this book. My one slight criticism is that I think they look too old. I was having a hard time believing this was a high school guy. And it's interesting because I always say I read every bit of the books, and in the back they have like a conversation with the author and the illustrator, and they had mentioned that in the early drawings they looked too young. So that's why they had to like change it a little bit. And it kind of went the other way for me because this final product, I feel I just couldn't, especially him, maybe her kind of, but even him, I just feel like looked way too old and just seemed way too old to be in high school. But other than that, everything to me was just so perfect and on par, and I just loved everything about this and would totally recommend this book. So that's it for October. Again, I'm hopeful that in the coming months, we've got a lot of holiday reads coming up, maybe some of those thrillers. That's what I'm reading now, my first November book, one of the thrillers that I was hoping to get to in September and October that I didn't. So I got a couple of thrillers on my TBR, some good holiday romance reads. Of course, that's always fun, but it is a hectic time of year, so we'll see how many I actually get through. But that's it for now, and happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you at the end of next month. Bye.